Welcome once again to Moments of Inspiration. Have you ever heard the abbreviation WWJD? I'm almost certain that if you are a disciple of Christ, that you would have heard this term before. It simply means, what would Jesus do? There are many names given to the follower of Christ in the Bible, such as believer, 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 15, brethren or brother, Acts chapter 18 and verse 27, saint, Revelation chapter 17 and verse 6, follower of the way, Acts chapter 24 and verse 14, Nazarene, Acts chapter 24 and verse 5, elect, Colossians chapter 3 and verse 12, and even friend, 3 John 15. Then there's the biggest name of them all, disciple, which was used by Jesus and the early church in the Gospels and the book of Acts. Let's examine for ourselves in Matthew chapter 28. In verse 7, after Jesus had risen, the angels instructed the woman to go and quickly tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead. Note, he had instructed the disciples. Verse 8 says, so the woman hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and they ran to tell whom again? His disciples. Verse 16 tells us, then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. Verse 18 tells us, then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make whom? Disciples of all nations. The book of Acts chapter 11 verses 25 and 26 says, then Barnabas went to Tarsus to look for Saul, and when he found him, he brought him to Antioch. So for a whole year, Barnabas and Saul met with the church and taught great numbers of people. The disciples of then, for the first time, were called Christians at Antioch. The term Christian is only used 3 times in the New Testament. In comparison, the word disciple is used 261 times in the New Testament. It is mentioned 72 times in the book of Matthew, 46 times in the book of Mark, 37 times in the book of Luke, 78 times in the book of John, and 28 times in the book of Acts. A disciple is someone who becomes like Christ in everything. The Apostle Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 15 that a disciple is someone who grows up into Christ in all things. And the Apostle John says in 1 John chapter 2 and verse 6 that he that claims to be a disciple of Christ ought himself to walk as he, Jesus, walked, and live as he lived. I close today with the words of Jesus in John chapter 8 and verse 31, which says, if you continue in my word, then you are my disciples indeed. God bless you. Until next time.